cut the wire and drive their four-wheeler through and go hunt horns. And I know I've spent weeks fixing fence where there's four-wheeler tracks and they just cut the fence. So I've found anyway, generally, and I can't hardly remember a situation where it hadn't happened. If we can find the cattle owner and let him know that he's got cows out of his fence, he'll be there immediately to get those cows back in and close the gate or fix the down fence. I don't know. Do we
That's why you see there's a difference in them as you have this in our planning regulations, the new subdivisions, it's their responsibility to fence out. Whereas the old rule of thumb was, fence in. And so that's, I think, why there's that difference. The newer subdivision, especially Spanish Valley and Pack Creek area, we've always had that fencing problem due to the cows that were coming down. TJ, did you have a...
Well, that helps in the subdivision. The problem that we're seeing a lot in the county is that people are subdividing their land, but not falling in the subdivision ordinance. So you go take
The minor.
piece of ground that has 640 acres. They divide it between their 4 kids.
Yeah.
One kid's running cows on it. One kid decides he wants to sell it and make some money. So he sells 100 acres. The way it writes now, the guy that owns the rest of the land around him has to go build that fence.
That's right.
When the new landowner said they don't want cows on them. But historically, there's been cows on the whole thing. And so this guy sells it, and it makes the rest of them pay this money to go fence the cows out. Where when a guy goes and buys 5 acres in the middle of this, but it doesn't fall under the subdivision ordinance because it's not a minor or major subdivision, it's just a plot of land.
Yeah.
Then the person around has to go build a fence around 5 acres. We're in the fence out law that every other county has. The guy that bought the land, that 5 acres, would have to go fence it. So you have somebody that goes like the state school section we're talking about. The way it reads, if you go and do a whole bunch of these land swaps, and all of a sudden there's all this state land now in the middle of BLM land that used to be BLM on a permit, and the state sells that to somebody else, the rancher around it's going to be building fence around every state school section in the county that gets traded for. So that's why this is a good time, in my opinion, to look at that, because when they do the land swap off the Bears Ears for all this other BLM ground, and then the state sells it, and the rancher that used to have that as a permit, now there's a piece of state land in the middle, he's going to have to go build a whole bunch of fence.
I don't think we'll have that problem, and that land swap's already dead. But most of the land we were swapping for was on a cliff or on a ridge or something.
But if a guy buys that and then says we don't want cows that just they trail across,
well, I understand that,
but he has to build the fence.
But they're trading for minerals. They're trading to be able to get minerals off of that land. That's why the state was willing to trade and leave that land in San Juan County, because they were fairly certain that there was minerals on that land they were trading for, that the BLM was never going to let anybody explore. But as state land, you could get a permit from the state because they would get a royalty off of that. They were eager to lease it for mineral exploration.
But if you look at like Looking Glass,
Yep.
they bought that thing, the rancher around it. Who's the one that builds the fence around that?
I don't know.
And so if you take a little rancher, I mean, if you look at the state of Utah, 80% of the ranchers in the state of Utah have 50 cows or less. I think that's the number. It's a lot. Well, you have a permit. There's a state school section in the middle. Now you've got, and her number said $2 a foot, and you're 5,000 feet, so you're $11,000 a mile. You got to go build 4 miles of fence. It could bankrupt. We're up to 50 cow operation.
That's right.
And so by somebody buying that, not only does it take their permit that they probably used to have with the state, that somebody outbid them on, because you can't bid as high to run cows on as somebody that's gonna put a glamping site on it. And now you gotta go put, to add insult to injury, you gotta go build a fence around this. And so that's the reason the rest of the state has switched that, is because it puts a burden twice basically on the rancher.
Well, I wouldn't want to even consider changing this without a public hearing. I would want to make sure that all of the cattlemen know that the county's considering making a change, and we inform them and they get a chance to weigh in.
And I agree with that. This meeting today, the purpose of today's meeting was just to bring up
Right.
that this is an issue and then see what you want to do from here. And I think a public hearing is a really good idea.
I'll tell you an example, Bruce, of what we just had. Guy bought a piece of ground out south of Blanding and took the fence out. Well, then the landowner across from his cows get on him. He calls and trespasses, and the sheriff's office goes and trespasses the guy's cows. And he's like, but there's a fence there. And he's like, well, I bought this property and I took the fence out. I don't have to have a fence here. You got to rebuild it. Well, there was one there. And it's like, how come well, you're going to have to move the fence over here and build a new one because I took this out on my property line. And there was already a fence there. And that's where the muddy part comes, is okay, now there's not a fence there. Who has to rebuild that fence? Is it the fence in guy that's cows are now getting on him, or the fence out guy that took the fence down?
Right.
So
Whoever took the fence down ought to be responsible to put it back up.
I agree.
Can
They
we,
argued over that.
And this clears that up of, look.
It clears a lot of, I
you
have a
tear the
lot of
fence down,
issues
the
like
cows
that.
get on you, they're not trespassing. You want them out, you put the fence back up.
well, we need to have some good examples of how the fence law is working in the county right now, and some good examples of how it would change if we change it to the other side, so that people in the public hearing really understand how it's going to affect them.
He has a comment.
The way it reads now is if I border a big farm and he hits the fence with his equipment, I have to fix the fence. That's not right either.
No, and there's a few farmers that do that on purpose
They take them out on.
because they don't like fences.
They want to farm every inch of ground they can farm, and I can't disagree with that. But if you damage something that, quote, is mine, you should have to fix it.
Okay. Jamie doesn't have to worry about it because the river is the fence,
Pretty low right now, they cross.
except when there's not much water flowing.
Those sheep tend to wander.
All I know is that when you have sheep, you're just looking for the most grass.
Yeah.
Then you're in the wrong place. You're gonna be looking for a long time.
Riverside has a lot of grass.
It's always on the river, isn't it?
But just my thoughts. We've got public hearings right now addressing housing needs, and these housing assessments that are going throughout our county are going to look into creating subdivisions at some point in areas where we're dedicating to housing. And this is maybe 10 years down the road, maybe even sooner. But, I'm thinking in purview of what belongs to the county and what it assesses, maybe that's the best place to look. And maybe talk about, fence out to protect homeowners.
Maybe a mix or something, but we could run it through our planning commission. That people are pretty familiar with watching land use issues and the public hearings that go through there, and do some public outreach on it. I don't know if we could ever do anything on the tribal lands. I think that's exempt from these type of ordinances, but anything outside of that. just take it through planning commission.
And something else to consider as well is kind of like what he was saying, where you've got these big parcels of, there's not a lot of big parcels of land that are staying big parcels of land. They do get subdivided. They get, either whether it's through kids or that family decides that they're just going to split the money that comes from the land, and they just split up a lot of, and you see it, in town, out of town, and it's becoming more common. And I see that becoming more common throughout the next years. And so that's why I'm kind of looking at this now to try to get ahead of it. It would be good just to have a direction either way. I think having, and I don't think having, you can make the ordinance to be what it needs to be and tailored, like this letter said, where it can be tailored to the county, but without having any ordinance or any ordinance really, and then having just the subdivision ordinance, or just having the BLM stating what they're going to state and the Forest Service stating what they're going to state, and then this ordinance, it just creates like these pockets of the law applies and then it doesn't apply, and so it just makes it very, very confusing. And so I think it's a time to really consider how can we make this
So if we have a public hearing,
better for our county.
will you draft a proposed ordinance?
Yes, our office would.
Okay.
And I would like to look at, and I haven't done this yet, but I would really be interested in looking at something like Kane County's ordinance, where they have a lot of similar issues, especially Garfield. I was going to say Garfield's another good one, especially with the federal lands and things like that. And so I would be interested in getting their ordinances, looking at what they have, and then also talking to their county attorneys and seeing how that ordinance has either hurt or helped with the legal issues regarding the fence out ordinance.
That's a good idea.
We could bring the draft back to the work session, and then before we kick it into the public hearing process,
Okay.
just get your general ideas if you like the direction, and then get your feedback from the draft, and then kick it into the process through planning commission after that.
Yeah, I can do that. I just wanted to kind of see what direction you wanted, but I'd be happy to look at drafting a proposed ordinance for our county.
I guess another contributing thought is, this sounds like whatever action we make, you've got BLM who's impacted, right? There's another Forest Service. And it might be a matter of reconciling the rules so that, we're sitting down with these agencies so we can coordinate these rules to complement each other. Because if we don't, it's working again, policy against policy. And here we are drafting something independently that maybe we might be violating someone else's standing rules. I don't know if that would require its own group of people or not, but there has to be a coordination at some point. Because I think one of the biggest mistakes we've made is we've done something off on our own, we run with it, and then we get in trouble because other people were there to begin with that we should have worked with, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. We can bring it up to our partners. We meet monthly with BLM in a coordinating meeting and bring it up with them.
And it might be a foot in for us to be involved in.
Similar with the Forest Service. TJ meets with them often.
Main coordination we need to make is with Deanne Ivans. She's good with it.
Well, I will say, though, one thing that is nice is the BLM's going to be aware of, because other counties where they have land are fence out, they're going to know how they navigate that already. We're kind of the only ones that I know of that they have to navigate the fence in with whatever policies they have.
It would be easier for the federal agencies to say, we agree with you. Somebody purchases a piece of property. It'd be easier if we say, all right, you're fencing us out. because then the state, the feds, they don't have to worry about it. It's the person buying that chunk of ground that has to worry about it. And that's probably where it should lie, because they're the ones seeking to make the money on it. They should have to. Well, they have to, if they're going to put in a subdivision, what do they got to do? They've got to do semi-permeable access. If they're doing sewer and water and electricity, they've got to do all that. The fence should be a part of that.
Yeah, similar to how we hire. We're working with these contractors. We make them do a list, a checkoff list, right? And you made sure you gone to this person, made sure you got clearance from this person on down, and that might work.
Yeah. And if we did have a fence out ordinance as well, it would make it easier for whoever's buying that land before they go in, if there is cattle already adjacent to it or close to it or whatever, then they go in with the expectation, well, if I want to keep them out, I do have to build a fence. So they know that going in before they purchase the land, rather than on the flip side where the cattle owner doesn't have control over that land, that adjacent land, of selling it, and now without doing anything different for them, acquiring the new land or anything like that, they now have to build a fence. Whereas if a property owner was going in with that expectation, then they could understand that I have to build a fence if I buy this land.
Yeah.
One thing that's good that we're doing this because we had time. We had time to explore. We had time to think of the angles of it, instead of trying to do in a hurry if we have an issue and trying to come up with. So I appreciate you bringing this to us, because maybe something we get preoccupied with other things, but sure glad that you're thinking about this, and then we had time to explore and visit with other counties, and so I think this is a good thing. So thank you. He has a
So this is just a question. So the issue that we had down by Blanding, when that happened, they took the fence out. They got trespassed. They had to move their livestock. So they had 40 or so cows and had to move them someplace else. Well, sometimes that's hard to do, to just move your livestock while you're battling this fence thing, where the sheriff's office is saying, hey, you're gonna have to build a new fence. And you know what I'm saying? And so I'm looking at this, how we have it, and it's like, so somebody goes and buys a piece of ground, somebody's got their cows on their property, and now all of a sudden it's like, hey, you have to move your cows off your property till you build this fence, is how it's written today. You gotta go build this fence around, because we're a fence in. So you gotta go kick your cows off until you get this fence built, because this person's trespassing you because they just bought this ground. So while we're doing this and exploring this, is there something that we can put that gives the rancher time that they don't have to move their cows tomorrow off their own land because they don't have the money or the time to go build this fence? When someone buys a piece of ground and says, you're trespassing, get your cows off. I bought this yesterday. Your cows can no longer eat this grass. Do you know what I'm saying? Because that happened. And then they had to move off their own land, and they fed hay until they could get it resolved between themselves on getting the fence put back in. But they fed hay, and if any of you have fed hay, you know,
Costs.
fence is expensive, but hay might be twice as expensive.
Yeah.
So that's just something to think about.
Can we do something in planning and zoning about if you buy property right now and you're surrounded by cattlemen doing their business, that you have to have a fence? Can that be something simple that we can do?
That's in there now.
This
That's in the subdivision ordinance now. That's why I
but if
knew.
there's just not subdivision, if they're just buying a property, just one piece needs to.
If you buy 600 acres, it doesn't apply. But if you come
Right.
and subdivide, it applies. And so
I think
That's
that
the
gets more
confusion.
complicated. I think first we need to figure out
That's
what's.
the
I think
buckets.
before we take any additional
Yeah.
Rules. Okay.
piecing this out to until I think we just need to figure out which direction we want to go and then do that. So I would propose that our office can draft a proposed ordinance to see what other counties are doing. Oh my gosh.
Hi, Mommy.
To see what other counties are doing. I will bring that proposed ordinance to the commission first in a work session. Then we can look at what that ordinance says, get the commissioner's opinion on it, and then have a public hearing on it. And you could get input from the public, and then we can decide what we want to do after that. That would be my proposed direction of what we go, not taking any
Sounds good.
action now.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Okay, guess we'll go ahead and move on to our second item. That's
All right, fees.
fee schedule discussion.
Let me share. I think there's only one. There was only one person online.
Is that Tyler?
Yeah, shared earlier, but he might not. He might have bumped off.
Is this the public health fees?
These are all of the county fees, and so let me pull it up in Zoom just in case we're broadcasting off of Zoom. If I can get there. All right. So what we've needed to do, and it's kind of been attempted before in the past, is just developing an ordinance with all of our fees that the county has in each department that's required to have fees or has fees. Technically, they're not supposed to be charging fees unless it's in an ordinance. And so what we're looking at today is I reached out to all the department heads and said, okay, we need to develop this ordinance by law. We're supposed to have it, so let's get it. And then the departments have put their fees on this fee schedule, current fees, and then if there's any proposed changes to any of their fees, then you see kind of a column here of their current and then the proposed changes that they would ask for. Some of them are reductions, some of them are increases, but you kind of see that. But either way, if some of them are staying with their current fees, they're fine, and we've adopted them through, contracts and things like that. But this is supposed to be a one-stop ordinance of all of our fees listed throughout the county that we're attempting to do here. And so today was just kind of a look at some of those changes in the departments that they've had. Some of them, like the recorder's office, sheriff's office, and I believe there's one other that's exempt, so recorder's office, sheriff's office, and I believe some of them in like our ambulance fees are set by state code. And so, but nevertheless, we need to list them here as well, but they may change according to state statute. And so those are kind of supposed to be exempt throughout, but we at least wanted to capture what we had to date. And
What's the ordinance violation? $1,000.
on the
Which ordinance?
business license. So I have them broken down in sections on here. And so if you look at on your recorder's office, you have the fees that apply to the recorder's office, business license fees. This is the business license ordinance that has that in there. And so these are current fees that are already there, whether it's home-based license renewal or your violation of the ordinance. And so if they've proposed a change on that, you'll see that proposed change. So for our business license, we're keeping with what's in the ordinance already and not asking for any changes to those. And so it kind of goes down.
Can I ask a question about the
Yeah.
fees? Are those monthly fees or yearly fees?
These are annual fees for the
So
business
$15
license.
for a home business, only $15.
Yeah.
Do you know we should kind of promote that and let people know how much it is? Because we have home business that people are not
Yeah.
They probably think it's lots of money or whatever, but $15 and you can be more able to
Reasonable.
advertise. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not
Well,
much.
Don't get confused about people that have businesses in the city
Cities are
or
different.
businesses in the county.
County.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Because the
that-
city would govern
Okay, so
city.
the
this is
home
we have,
businesses
but
in the city.
yeah, but even that, sometimes people avoid, and I don't know if they avoid getting licensed because they're thinking how much it costs, but
Yeah. And
but
even
$15,
$50 a year for
that's
a
not,
business license isn't that much. And so if you're in violation of the ordinance, that's, I mean, the $1,000 is really
So,
the kicker.
so that doesn't apply in the city, right?
These don't apply in the city. Cities
So
have
if
their
it's
own
somebody-
process.
if we discover somebody has a business is not having a license, then the $1,000 apply. I mean, that seems
Only
kind of,
after, so we give them notice.
Oh, okay.
You know, if we find, say,
Yeah.
what we commonly see this is an Airbnb rental
yeah,
that is working without a business license. Or you need to have a business license. Well, I don't meet zoning, and then it kicks them into the zoning process to get the clarification in zoning. If it's not allowed in that zone, and they continue to operate an Airbnb, then it's the $1,000 starts kicking in.
okay.
To regulate the business itself. And so most of our businesses are really, really good and work with us well. It's those ones that you discover that kind of an illegal business that's out there operating. And so most of them, before we had the business license process is probably only 3-4 years old. Before we had that, we had businesses coming in and saying, "Oh, I can't apply for this business loan because I don't have verification and proof that my business exists here because you don't have a business license." And so we created that with COVID. In the economic development grants that we offer for businesses, you have to be a licensed business within the county or the cities to be able to get those awards. And so it kind of
It's a good
is
way
their
to
best
encourage them
interest.
too,
Mhm.
because we have lots of people that apply for that.
absolutely, yep,
So,
yeah, yep.
anyway.
So these on the business licenses are kind of staying where we're at. There's no proposed changes in there. The surveyor's office is probably one of the only ones, and along with the recorders, that had fees that were adopted by ordinances. In here, you kind of see their fees along with the Utah code fees, but there's no real changes that they're asking for with those. I've asked them to also look at other comparables, other counties throughout the state to look to see how we are. Are we on par with other counties of what they're charging? State code is going to dictate on the elected side what they can charge. We are missing some of the fees on here, so I want you to know that this isn't all inclusive yet. We still have, I don't think the assessors has done their fees on here. So when you go to Board of Equalization, we need to get Board of Equalization fees on here, as well as kind of the assessor department fees. I don't have the treasurer's office if there's any fees in there. Grand County has treasurer office fees for prints, things like that, the treasurer's office. So we still have to fine tune some of these so it's not all encompassing yet. When you get into like the non-departmental, we haven't touched these fees since 2015. That we've kind of just, the fair building, to rent the fair building, it's $50 a day. The arena, $50 a day. The stage, we use a lot of the stage. A lot of the cities, Moab City will rent the stage for their performances, and we take that stage out and set it up for them, charge them those fees that are related to that. The one that's new on here is one that we were asked the other day for somebody to go down and prep the arena, and typically that is just going and whether they're disking or tilling up the arena so it's softer dirt, softer fall. And we haven't charged for that fairgrounds arena prep that's outside of our typical operations, which are really your spring, summer, and fall prep work that we do automatically for the events, for the rodeo, and for, you know, the
But this would
roping.
be for non-county events.
These are non-county events that we would charge. We had somebody that wanted to rent the arena, and they're like, "Hey, county, will you go?
Yeah.
Will you go turn the dirt
Get it.
in there?" And so it's something like that. We would charge 150. I figured a couple hours worth of staff time and equipment. 150 sounds pretty reasonable for that. Have the clerk auditor fees on here, and Lyman, I don't know, is there a fee for your alcohol licenses? That
I was just thinking about that. We do have fees.
Okay.
They're not on here.
That's what I was wondering. I seen the 3 here. I think he has a change on here. No, so you've got the $10 marriage license copy going from $5 to $10. The marriage license copy of a non-certified $0 to $2. So not a huge drastic jump in their library. Are keeping their fees. I asked also if there's ever an exemption or ever a time that the director may allow for a fee waiver. There's a whole entire process that I'll have mapped out in the ordinance where if somebody appeals and comes to the commissioners can waive a fee. And if the director head's allowed, then that department head could then waive a fee if it's in here that they can waive it. And so there are opportunities and times when the librarian will waive a fee on there if it correlates with their programming, things like that. They may waive a fee for their conference room use, things like that. But other than that, the fees are kind of standard that they're keeping, not any changes in there, but they do list the exceptions here, that times when they may, if there's say if you wanted to rent the library conference room for a political campaign, those are free. And so you can go and rent that space with free of charge. So there's that exception in there rather than paying just your regular conference room space fee, because it's a public event and libraries are established for kind of that free speech zone and that political realm, then we waive those fees there. And so it just kind of notes that those waivers are allowed in there. Environmental health. So in public health, they've taken their fees through the public health board. And so you can see the fees that they used to have. And if there's not a number, say, for example, this gray water system permit, it didn't have a current fee. Now they do have a fee. So they're adding more fees to their structure and their system. Now, mind you, in all of this, when we go to adopt a fee schedule ordinance, it does require public hearing and public notification. And so we will be doing that, and we will be getting additional, public outreach for this process. But public health also has already gone through a public hearing with their board when they looked at these fees, and their board adopted their fees. One thing with their fees, and Jimmy, you may be able to touch on this, the public health board recommends that there also be adjustments in 2025 and 2026, which is kind of an escalation of your fees throughout a period of time. I haven't seen that. Maybe it's common in the public health world, but typically your fees, the county, are fixed in the ordinance, and they don't annual adjust. Imagine if the federal government did that to us, where our federal fees automatically adjust year by year, but never go backwards, and so even though you may put a cost of index factor in here where it inflates every year on year, you're just getting to a point, when does it stop? And so for our fee ordinance, it'll just be this year's fees. If they want to come back and amend the ordinance at a later date, they can. But to me, I wouldn't recommend adding an escalation factor every year, because all that really does is every year it's punishing, but then your documents now have to change, website has to change, things like that. It just administratively creates a headache. Haven't had a chance to talk to Grant of what the proposal and how to finesse that. Jamie, I don't know if you were there.
Yeah, I was there when the board was addressing this, and I think this is their best approach to catching up to current cost, because it's been quite some time since they've ever made any adjustments, as opposed to imposing a this is the new fee and it's going to be more.
Okay.
It's more incrementalizing, so everyone gets a chance to accept it, as opposed to sticker shock.
Okay.
I think that was the mentality. Based on that, I'm just curious, how often does the commission? When was the last time the commission ever entertained the fee for the counties? Is it annually, or has this been a while?
This is the first
20
fee
years.
schedule ordinance, and so yeah. So once we put it on here, we can look at it annually. That takes somebody behind the scenes bringing it to your attention every year. I worry about just that connotation that the public will have of that is like, and every year you guys are ratcheting up the fees instead of just ripping off the Band-Aid and
To another one.
going right to where market is. Some of these we haven't done that in other departments where we're just ripping off the Band-Aid, saying that here's what's applicable in other counties, this is what they're charging, so let's charge that. And so maybe, I mean, 330 to 400, that's not a lot of money, but if you're coming in and you need that septic system and you need that inspection, you're going to pay whatever it is. And so it kind of makes sense where they were heading, but why not just make it, if market is 400, make it 400 and go through the hurt once. Because even when we change this, it's another public hearing. It's another time for the public to come out and just say, hey, your fees are too high. I think we'll hear during that public hearing kind of that sentiment with them. So
better to.
But then everything else is going up.
everything
high.
else is going up.
Stamps,
Yep.
gas,
Yes.
everything is so. Food, I mean, everything is going up. So it's not like
Yeah. Yeah.
salaries. I mean, everything. is So
Mhm. Ratchet up. So just
and the prices are not that much high. It's not doubling or tripling, whatever. It's just
55 to 85.
just basic keeping up with the supply, like paper, everything we had to use. It probably
Yeah.
hasn't got that. I
Do you
mean,
feel
yeah.
comfortable for that, Commissioner? Just going right to the top.
Yeah, if we
Yeah.
go right onto the top, because if it's been 20 years since we've addressed
It's
this.
all gonna hurt, no matter what.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
just rip the Band-Aid off. Go
So
right to
sometimes
the.
it's just very one little bit at a time.
Yeah. Rather than ratcheting up every year, going through public hearing every year,
Yeah.
and taking on that hurt every year.
Just remember, fees are another form of a
Tax, and the citizens will
And the
state that
citizens-
exactly. They see the
You
same.
want to start raising taxes,
Yep.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
um,
They will see that. But part of it is, if you're in that opportunity where you want to install a septic system, there's the cost to it, and you're gonna pay those costs. And so, but you do have to make sure that you're reasonable and comparative. I don't think the county should ever be in a position where we're leading the market in our fees, and I don't feel that we're that. I don't feel that our department heads have that about them, that they're pretty cognizant of making sure that these are fair and just fees, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that get the feedback from the public, of how expensive the fees are. Then you get down to, so some of these are new that we've never had before, but is typical and common throughout the county or other counties. The waste tire fees, waste storage facility permit fees, things like that that are I think we still have to work on and just fine tune to make sure we're not double charging them. We've got landfill fees that also charge for tires, and so kind of interested to see what their waste tire fees are for public health, whereas we also have landfill tire fee disposals. Are those the same thing with departments? And so we'll work through some of those that are kind of duplicate in nature. When you look at the landfill, which is I was just touching on, this is where you've got the tires, those fees that we have down at the landfill for people to dispose of tires. Well, if public health has a tire disposal fee, landfill has a tire disposal fee. To me, why are we charging the public two different fees for the same tire? And so we'll try to be a little bit kind on there and try to work through those. There are proposed changes down at the landfill where you have the single axle trailer, double axle trailer drop off fees that are going up from 15 to 20, 20 to 25. Non-hazardous oil, all those kind of just stay the same till you get to mattresses. Mattresses are difficult. Box springs are just as difficult. We have a pile down at the landfill of mattresses and box springs. The cities also collect a fee for box springs and mattresses because you can't bury them in the landfill. They always just tend to creep up, and so
I heard the mattress and those type of things can be
recycled up north, but you have to take them up to Salt Lake to do it, and so or you have to have enough for them to come down and get them, and so we store them off to the side, hoping for a better day to where we can recycle those. But the cost of that across the board, and this is kind of common, is $15 throughout the state, where we're only charging 10. So it's kind of matching what everybody else is charging. I talked about the tires. We'll work through the tire issue. The state still has their program where for all of our tire collection, they will come down and reimburse us for the disposal of tires. So right now the program, and as long as it's state funded, is free to the county on the recycle program. But talking to Jed through this, he's like, well, we hear that the state may no longer do that in the future. They may no longer rebate or reimburse the county for the disposal. So he wants to keep that fee continuing forward. But as of right now, they come and take our tires away, we pay for it, and then the state reimburses that cost to dispose of the tires. Let's see on.
I have a question about the dead animals. Are there basic animals that are found on the road?
Yeah,
Because I can't picture people just taking the dead animal to the landfill.
Or general carcasses from the deer hunts, the meat processing plants,
Okay.
things like that throw away their dead carcasses. TJ, when he slaughters all of his beef, that carcass has got to go somewhere. With the road department fees, you see some of those. We haven't had their fees in a schedule before, so you're seeing the proposed changes all in that column. There's things that we haven't charged for that we need to start, especially if you look at Spanish Valley. We did an awesome job of chipping the roads there. So taking them from dirt, we added the gravel, chipped it. Now we're getting cuts in that road, as infrastructure goes in. And then typically what happens after that is staff then has to come in and repair what the contractor did or didn't do, especially if they didn't compact it. And so there's extra staff burden that goes on there. And so we're kind of trying to regulate that a little bit more in the county and charge for that. So there's a cut in a paved surfaces, we recommend boring, and there's a fee to the boring if they go under the road. But if they cut the pavement, then we have a fee for that now. Start charging them because we oftentimes do have to go out after those patches settle and re-asphalt those so it doesn't create bumps in the roads. Or if the infrastructure settles in general, we're typically the one out there cleaning up the mess and making sure that the roads navigable.
So, Mac, I've got a couple of thoughts maybe that could be relevant here on the road department. There might be an opportunity for the county road department to benefit from the chapters out there down south. Herman Farley brought up the idea of using tribal funds to pay county to repair potholes
Okay.
or trust fund money
Yeah.
to hire TJ, just TJ and his shovel to come down. And they're willing to do that, and it benefits the county.
Okay.
So that's something I know that a lot of the chapters would really support and I don't know, TJ might think I've got to shovel and care for my cows and take care of my family and I can't do it.
Yeah.
But that's an opportunity. The second thing is a lot of the folks down south, they maintain their roads just because of the situation with the roads, but they're culverts.
Mm-hmm.
I know there might be some culverts that are still usable that the county could sell to folks down south, even the chapters. And that could be another fee that could be
Okay.
put in here. So just some thoughts on that. So
Okay. 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 Thanks, Tammy. Right. Any other concerns with the road department? We'll keep on going down. Co-working space over Monticello Library, those are set. We're not asking for adjustments to there. See a lot of changes with our building permits and building permit process in general. This one, as we look back throughout time, it's pretty hard to figure out what people have paid in the past, what they haven't paid, where they paid it, who they paid it to. So we're kind of fine tuning that process. And so in there, you see right now there's for the plan review and building permit process, you got 10% of estimated costs of the building permit, and then 1% of the building valuation on a building permit. We've seen, people trying to hedge this where, they may value the building. If it's 1% of the building value up front, they may value the building at $50,000 instead of an actual appraised value. And so they're working themselves around that by having the opportunity to value their own building before it's built. So what we've done on here is just based it off of, so we've rolled the plan review and the building permit into one, where we'll charge, instead of 1%, it'll be 1.75 of the square footage. And she's given an example here is 1.75 for a 2,000 square foot home will be 3,500. And then in the inspections, she's, instead of $65 per inspection, you're allowed up to 8. It's just a single $65 for an inspection plus mileage on here. So each inspection, whether you need 9 or 10, is that $65 plus mileage on there. We did bump up the rates to appeal. If you're appealing for time extension, like on a conditional use, it's going from $100 to $150. The business sign permit is $50, going up to $150. On the work done without a permit, right now it's 200% of the permit fee and proof of up to the work, that time that the building has been built. on here, the change on here is 2 times the permit price plus 150 a week. If you're not in compliance, you don't have that permit. If continued beyond that 30-day notice. And so this is kind of standard that we're seeing in other counties, is kind of where we've got that. On here, we added outside consultant. Sometime in our building inspections, we do have to hire an outside consultant. Say, for example, if our building inspector isn't certified in mechanical or electrical, we hire that out. We've used Jones and DeMille in the past. Instead of the county bearing those costs, the actual cost now for those inspections will have to be borne by that developer and the building, so that they're covering the outside consulting inspections. Sometimes if we have to get outside consultants on here as well, at a higher level, if it's hydrology and the water design, water engineering, then it's the actual cost for consulting, so that the taxpayers don't have to pay, for this elaborate design next to a creek. And so we'll push those off to them. And then in the planning itself, you see those changes in our planning fees. That should be $2,000 on that amount instead. So it'd be $2,000 plus $50 per lot. And we, similar with up above, we've rolled preliminary plat review and final subdivision together, because it's really one entire complete process, excluding your minor. And then kind of continuing down, these are pretty standard across the board. Conditional use permit, we have been undercharging for years. It's just $350. We're bumping that up to $1,000, pretty significant jump. But if you're wanting on a medium project, which is kind of rare for us, we typically see our conditional use permits on smaller projects, which, $400 jump on that one. But your medium projects, your larger projects are like your Balance Rock Resort type projects. And so those fees kind of are relative to the size of development that would be coming in for those. We do have the appeal process going up. We've spent a lot of money this year, taxpayer funds, on our appeal process, which is fine. That's what it's there. It keeps us out of district court. But instead of just $100 for each appeal, we've got $500 plus additional sums charged by the administrative law judge. When you look at the administrative law judge, he may charge for additional items on there, or if they don't return documents, or if they're not in compliance, then he may charge them with additional fees. And so I wanted to reflect that language in here, that if the administrative law judge adds additional charges, then our ordinance allows for that, which is already in another ordinance for the administrative law judge process. Short-term rental inspections, as we work to get a enforcement officer here. This one, every year they've got to be inspected. And so this charges them for that inspection that'll take place, so that we don't have to bear the brunt of it. Those inspections go back to those that have short-term rentals through our business license to meet that inspection. They can have it self-inspected by somebody else and verify that inspection's taken place. But if they use the county, then there's a charge for those inspections.
So, Mike, I have a question on that. So
Yep.
in the past, they didn't pay anything for this?
We don't have anything for inspections, nor would I say we're inspecting either. But we should be. We're supposed to be. And so this gets us to a point where we have that.
Also had a question about the kind of lost. Anyway, there's got to do with the overnight accommodation.
This one right here, the one.
Now that we're charging $500. So in the past, there was
Nothing.
Nothing.
So if you think of the overlay districts that we've done
No
through
wonder we're
planning,
so poor, huh?
yes, well,
Um,
we never had the fee for the process. So they come in wanting an overnight
yeah.
overlay district. That's been free. And then all of the staff times to make them adhere to that ordinance and all of the review checks and working with their concept
you know-
plans has been free. And so
With business like that, they make their money really quick, and it's not like we are trying to sponsor them, because I can see somebody starting a small business, trying to build, but yeah.
these are the
That's a
big
good thing.
developers.
So they pay for the license, business license, and this is separate than the business.
This is
license.
separate from the
Okay.
business license. Yep.
Okay.
This is just getting through the planning process. And so we've never charged them a fee to come back for an overlay district. Well, now there's a fee that's associated with that. Similar with the signs, regulating the signs in the county, temporary use permits. We see, a temporary use typically would be like I'm putting a construction trailer on site just for as I build my home. Now there's that fee that's applicable and appropriate for that. Engineering review, if we go through in the planning department, we have to kick it to an engineer, then it's up to the developer to pay those actual costs instead of being borne by the county. The next one here, and kind of the final department that we have on here, is our sheriff's office. Remember, the sheriff's office is exempt from a fee schedule. Nevertheless, you see it in Grand County similar, and you see it now here in the counties, those fees that they charge. This isn't a fee for speeding. This is more of the administrative fees that they charge within the sheriff's office. All the other fees that are typical with their operations, citations, things like that are found in Utah code. And so they've made the reference here on there, but the other ones that we charge administratively are the ones that are posted on here. So not too drastic in the charges and the changes that they have on here. Some of them are also reflective of the time. Housing and non-law enforcement, the $25 a day is going up to $75. Obviously, the cost to house an inmate, it's gone up since we
Is there
last
a
looked
fee
at
in
this.
there for a sheriff deputy to be present on site at an event?
No,
Do we need that?
we do. Yes, because I seen on a payroll statement the other day, it was like $55 that they're getting for event overtime pay. And so, yeah, we'll have to add that to make sure that that's.
So I know we get quite a few requests with
We do.
SB 78 passing the other day. We'll get more movies here.
Yes. Yes. And if we have that picture for Commissioner Adams received what was it, an Emmy? What is it? What's the little guy on the statue?
Oscar.
Is Oscar, yeah. He
Yeah.
received an actual Oscar award from the Utah Film Commission. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Best supporting commissioner.
Yeah. Best supporting commissioner. It was pretty cool. Heavy
I have
little
a
guy.
question from the sheriff office when they deliver a subpoena or whatever service they're doing. Whoever pays that fee is the person requesting for that to be served by the sheriff, or the person receiving the.
Yeah, and those are all found in the Utah code.
Okay.
And so those fees are set at the state. And so
$2.50 per mile.
yeah, no,
what they
that's just
pay for
that's in addition. So you have this state fee, and then you'll have the processing side of it,
Okay.
which is more administrative. Any other questions?
These will be adopted in our commission meeting today.
No. What we'll do is we'll fine tune it like you had mentioned, we've got to add the movie set on here. I've got to go through and just have that discussion on the tire recycling.
Does
So
it
that
require a public hearing?
it does,
Okay.
yeah. So the next step is I will put this. If you're okay with the kind of the direction that we're going, I'll make the final changes. Check with the assessor's surveyor's office that aren't on here, and then I will go in and finalize it in an ordinance form and make sure that we have exclusionary language in there when we can give exclusions to these fees or exemptions to the fees. And so I'll fix that. But at first, I at least wanted you to see this so that you're aware of those changes. Then we'll take it through the public process.
Thank you.
And so, and we may, yes, be screamed at, but we're so far behind on our fees here that we've got to catch up. It's just not fair for our processes. It's not fair to the public that some of the fees that we don't charge, we're using taxes and really not benefiting all of the citizens as a whole. And so,
Okay.
but yes, you kind of like Commissioner's Adams' comments is some of the public do see if you can't raise taxes, you fee. And so there is that sentiment out there, what I'm fully aware, but there are things that the county staff does that really are a little bit extra than what our tax collection can cover.
Okay. I think we're good with that then. So maybe next meeting? If no.
Okay, no, we're fine. This next one on the agenda was an executive session, a closed executive session to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual is permitted
All right.
under, and so we just need a motion to
Motion.
enter
for
into that executive session.
I'll make a motion, we go into executive session.
All right. Motion by Commissioner Adams for executive session.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Stubbs.
Thanks, TJ, for your comments. That helped.
So I'd like to
You
see
stay here, don't you?
Yeah, you can stay here. You're an attorney. You can stay here.
Do we
Brittany
need
and
a
her
vote?
baby gets to stay.
Okay. Let's take a vote on motion for executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
And then make sure we're offline.
This is non-county business, but are you familiar
Yeah, we
with
gotta get
the
Tammy
book
in there.
that
I can
has
set
the
it.
family, all the San Juan County families, the 3-volume books. Are you familiar? It has lots about the Jens, the Nielsen family. Lots of pictures, lots of.
I think so, yeah.
Are you familiar with them? Oh, okay. Because I was just looking at the Family History Center just today, and
There's been a lot of good stuff put together,
yeah, so I was.
a bunch of that stuff.
There's 3 blue volumes. They're blue, and it was done by Shamway. What's his name?
It's,
Yeah, the history.
Mars,
It's by the historian. Yeah,